The signal came from nowhere. For 300 years, the Vega Expanse had been silent. The Galactic Union had marked it as a dead zone on every star map. Ships that went in did not come out. Probes sent into the region simply stopped transmitting. The Union had decided long ago that whatever killed the colony ship, Eternal Dawn, still waited in that darkness. So they drew a line around those stars and told everyone to stay away. But signals do not care about lines on maps. Ambassador Una was eating her morning meal when the message arrived. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and gray hair that she kept short. She had spent 40 years working for the Union Diplomatic Corps, talking to species that breathed poison and species that communicated through color changes and species that existed as clouds of intelligent gas. She thought she had seen everything the galaxy could offer. She was wrong. The message was simple. It was a repeating pulse of radio waves coming from deep inside the Vega Expanse. The pattern was not random. It was not natural. Someone had built a transmitter and pointed it at the stars and said, "In the oldest and most basic way possible, we are here." The Union Council met within hours. The great chamber filled with representatives from 100 worlds. The Keth came in their clicking swarms, their insect bodies gleaming under the lights. The Moral floated in their water tanks, their tentacles pressed against the glass as they listened. The Vorms stood like living statues, their silicon bodies humming with electrical thoughts. "The signal matches old Earth patterns," said the chief analyst. A young Keth named Bora. Her wings fluttered with excitement as she spoke. "We compared it to records from before the Great Exodus. The encoding is human. There is no doubt." The chamber erupted in noise. Every species had their own way of showing surprise. The Keth clicked. The Moral bubbled. The Vorm flashed with internal light. But they all meant the same thing. The lost colony might still be alive. Commander Taiho stepped forward. He was tall for a Keth, with darker coloring than most of his kind. He had spent his entire career studying the old records of humanity. He knew their history better than most humans who still lived in the core worlds. He knew about their wars and their art and their strange ability to survive things that should have killed them. "I will lead the expedition," he said. His voice was calm, but his wings betrayed his excitement. "I have prepared for this moment my entire life." Ambassador Una stood up from her seat. "I will go as well. If there are survivors, they will meet a diplomat. They have been alone for 300 years. We cannot simply arrive with warships and expect them to trust us." The council debated for 3 days. Some said the risk was too great. Some said the potential reward was worth any danger. In the end, they voted to send one ship. It would be fast and well-armed, but it would not look like an invasion force. It would look like what it was: a hand reaching out across the darkness. The ship was called the Gentle Dawn. Una thought the name was appropriate. They were going to find out what had happened to the Eternal Dawn, after all. Perhaps they could bring some gentleness to whatever they found. The crew was small. Taiho commanded. Una handled diplomacy. Bora ran the sensors and communications. A Moral named Jisoo served as the ship's doctor, his tank connected to the medical bay by a series of tubes and mechanical arms. A Vorn named Duri handled engineering, her crystal body fitting perfectly into the tight spaces of the engine room. They gathered on the bridge for the final jump. The Vega Expanse hung before them on the view screen, a patch of stars that looked no different from any other patch of stars. But everyone knew what waited inside. Death had lived there for 3 centuries. "Final checks complete," Bora reported. "Jump drive is ready?" Taiho looked at his crew. He saw fear in some of them. He saw excitement in others. He felt both inside himself. "Whatever we find," he said, "we face it together. We are the first Union ship to enter this space in 300 years. We may find nothing but graves. We may find survivors who hate us for taking so long. We may find something we cannot imagine, but we will face it with open eyes and open hearts. Yuna smiled at him. Well said, Commander. Now let us go meet our lost cousins. Taiho nodded. Jump. The stars stretched into lines of light. The ship shuddered as it punched through the fabric of space. For a moment, everything was white and silent and strange. Then they arrived, the view screen filled with fire. Ships burned in the darkness ahead of them. Massive vessels, bigger than anything the Union had ever built, exchanged weapons fire with sleek black shapes that seemed to drink the light around them. Explosions bloomed like flowers made of destruction. Debris tumbled through the void, some of it still glowing from the heat of whatever had torn it apart. Bora's wings went flat against her back. I am reading thousands of ships. Weapon signatures I have never seen before. This is not a battle. This is a war. Jisoo pressed his tentacles against his tank. The energy readings are impossible. How can they generate such power? Dory's crystal body flickered with rapid calculations. Some of those ships are human design, modified beyond recognition, but the base structure matches old colony records. Yuna stared at the screen. Her morning meal turned to stone in her stomach. They did not die, she whispered. They have been fighting. For 300 years, they have been fighting. Taiho's mandibles clicked together slowly. He had studied humans all his life. He thought he understood them, but nothing in his studies had prepared him for this. Incoming transmission, Bora said. One of the human ships is hailing us. The screen flickered. A human face appeared. It was a woman, young but with eyes that looked ancient. A scar ran from her forehead to her jaw. She wore armor that looked like it had been welded onto her skin. Behind her, alarms screamed and sparks flew from damaged systems. Unknown vessel, she said. Her voice was flat and hard. Identify yourself and state your purpose. You have 30 seconds before we assume you are hostile. Yuna stood up slowly. She raised her empty hands, showing she held no weapons. I am Ambassador Yuna of the Galactic Union. We received your signal. We came to help. The woman stared at her for a long moment. Then she laughed. It was not a happy sound. Help, she said. You came to help. 300 years late. The transmission cut off. Taiho looked at Yuna. Neither of them knew what to say. They had come to rescue survivors. Instead, they had walked into a war zone, and the survivors did not look happy to see them. The battle raged around them for 6 more hours. The gentle dawn drifted at the edge of the combat zone, too small to matter to either side. Bora kept the engines cold and the weapons offline. They watched as human ships tore into the black vessels with weapons that burned like small suns. They watched as the black vessels fired back with beams that seemed to erase matter from existence. Ships died on both sides. Thousands of lives ended in flashes of light. Yuna could not look away. She had seen violence before. The galaxy was not a peaceful place. But this was different. This was not a battle between nations or species fighting over resources. This was something older and darker. This was survival. Finally, the black vessels began to retreat. They folded into themselves and disappeared, leaving behind only wreckage and silence. The human ships did not celebrate. They began rescue operations immediately, pulling survivors from damaged vessels, recovering bodies where they could. They are efficient, Taiho observed quietly. No wasted movement. No hesitation. They have done this many times. A new transmission came through. The same woman from before appeared on the screen. The fires behind her had been put out, but she looked even more tired than before. Union vessel, she said. You stayed. You did not run. That earns you one conversation. Prepare to receive a boarding party. Any weapons pointed at my people will be answered with the destruction of your ship. Do you understand? Yuna nodded. We understand. We will not resist. The woman's expression did not change. Smart choice. 20 minutes later, a small shuttle attached to the Gentle Dawn's airlock. The crew gathered in the main corridor to receive their guests. Yuna stood in front, her diplomatic robes straight and clean. Taiho stood beside her, his posture formal but not threatening. The others waited behind them, nervous and curious. The airlock opened with a hiss. 3 humans stepped through. The first was the woman from the transmissions. Up close, she was even more intimidating. Her armor was not just worn. It was part of her. Yuna could see where metal merged with skin, where technology had been grafted onto flesh. A name was stenciled on her chest plate. Captain G1. The second was a young man, barely more than a boy. His eyes glowed with a soft blue light. Implants, Yuna realized. His eyes had been replaced with machines. He moved with the careful grace of a pilot, always aware of the space around him. His name tag read Lieutenant Do-hyun. The third was a woman who carried a medical kit in one hand and a rifle in the other. She had kind eyes and a hard mouth. She looked like someone who had seen too much death and kept working anyway. Sergeant Eung.G1 looked at the alien crew with no expression on her scarred face. So the Union still exists. We wondered. We never stopped looking for you, Yuna said. The Vega Expanse was marked as a dead zone. We thought everyone had died. Many did, Jiwon replied. Many more were born into this war. The dying and the fighting never stopped. It just became normal. She turned to examine Taiho with cold interest. Keth, I read about your species in the old databases. High social structure. Excellent pattern recognition. Poor individual combatability. Taiho's wings twitched, but he kept his voice calm. I am Commander Taiho. I have studied human history extensively. I hope to one day meet living humans. And now you have. Jiwon did not seem impressed. We do not have time for lengthy introductions. My admiral wants to see you. You will come with us to the command station. Your crew will remain here. If you try anything foolish, Sergeant Eunji will shoot you in the head. She's very good at her job. Eunji smiled at Yuna. It was a friendly smile, which somehow made it more frightening. I'm also a medic, so I could shoot you and then keep you alive for questioning. But I hope we will be friends instead. Da-hyun spoke for the first time. His voice was soft and mechanical, filtered through something in his throat. The ambassador seems genuine, Captain. My sensors detect no deception in her biometrics. Jiwon grunted. Your sensors have been wrong before. Only twice. Twice is enough to get people killed. Jiwon looked at Yuna again. Will you come? Yuna glanced at Taiho. He gave a small nod. They had not come all this way to turn back now. We will come, Yuna said. But I would like to know what we are walking into. Who were those black ships? What have you been fighting for 3 centuries? Jiwon was quiet for a moment. Something flickered in her eyes. Not fear exactly. Exactly. Something older and colder than fear. We call them the Hollow, she said finally. They were here when our ancestors arrived. This was supposed to be paradise. Empty worlds, rich resources, perfect for colonization. But the Hollow were already here. They just were not visible. Not visible? Taiho asked. They exist partially in another dimension. Subspace, our scientists call it. They can phase in and out of normal reality at will. Our ancestors could not see them until it was too late. Jiwon's hand moved to a scar on her arm, touching it without seeming to realize. The Hollow do not conquer. They do not negotiate. They use other species as hosts for their reproduction. They hollow you out from the inside and wear your body like clothing until they are done with it. Then they move to the next host. Yuna felt sick. That is horrible. Yes. Ji-won's voice was flat. We learned quickly that running was impossible. They control the hyperspace lanes in this region. Any ship that tried to leave was caught and seated. So our ancestors did the only thing they could. They learned to fight. They built weapons that could hurt beings made of shadow and subspace. They turned themselves into soldiers. For 300 years? Jisoo asked from his tank, his voice bubbling through the translator. Ji-won looked at the moral with something that might have been respect. For 300 years, every generation born into war, every child learning to shoot before they learned to read, every adult knowing they would probably die in battle. She straightened her armored shoulders. We are tired, but we are not beaten. And tomorrow, we end this forever. How? Yuna asked. You will see. Ji-won turned toward the airlock. Come, the Admiral is waiting. She does not like the wait. Yuna followed the human soldiers back to their shuttle. The interior was cramped and functional, every surface worn smooth by years of use. There were no decorations, no personal touches. Just efficiency. As the shuttle detached and flew toward the massive station in the distance, Yuna looked out the small window at the debris field they passed through. Pieces of ships tumbled slowly in the void. Some of them had markings she could read. Names and numbers. Each piece had been a vessel full of people. Do you recover your dead? She asked quietly. Ji-won did not look up from her console. When we can. Sometimes there is nothing left to recover. Sometimes we are too busy fighting to stop for the fallen. Her voice softened slightly. We remember them though. Every name. Every face. We have a wall on the homeworld with all their names carved into the stone. It is very long. How long? It circles the capital city twice. Ji-won finally looked at Yuna. Do you understand now, Ambassador? This is not a rescue mission anymore. You have walked into a war that has consumed everything we are. Either you help us end it, or you watch us end ourselves trying. Those are your only choices. Yuna did not have an answer. She was not sure one existed. The shuttle approached the command station, and the future waited inside. The command station was a city floating in space. Yuna had seen large structures before. The Union built massive orbital platforms around their core worlds. But this was different. This station had been built in layers over centuries, new sections welded onto old ones as the colony grew and changed. It looked like something that had grown rather than been built, a metal organism that had survived by constantly adapting. The shuttle docked at a military bay near the center of the station. Soldiers moved through the corridors with purpose, their armor bearing the marks of recent combat. Some of them stared at Yuna and Taiho as they passed. None of them smiled. Ji-won led them through a maze of passages until they reached a large door marked with symbols Yuna did not recognize. Guards stood on either side, their weapons ready but not raised. The Admiral is inside, Ji-won said. Speak honestly. She can tell when people lie, and she does not like liars. The door opened into a room full of light. Windows covered one entire wall, looking out at the stars and the distant planet that the colonists called home. A large table stood in the center of the room, covered with maps and displays showing fleet positions and enemy movements. Several officers stood around the table, their faces tired but focused. At the head of the table stood a woman who had to be the Admiral. She was old. That was Yuna's first impression. Old in a way that spoke of years and battles and losses beyond counting. Her hair was silver and cut short. Her face was lined with scars and wrinkles in equal measure, but her eyes were sharp and clear. the eyes of someone who had never stopped fighting. "Admiral Hyeben," Jiwan said, snapping to attention. "The Union representatives, as requested." Hyeben studied Yuna and Taiho for a long moment. Her expression gave nothing away. 300 years, she said finally. Her voice was strong despite her age. "We sent signals. We sent probes. We sent messages scratched into the hulls of ships we pushed toward Union space. Nothing. And now you appear, in the middle of our final offensive, saying you want to help." Yuna bowed her head. "We did not know. The signals never reached us. The probes never arrived. The Vega expanse was marked as dead space. We thought you were all gone. We nearly were. Many times." Hyeben walked slowly around the table, her eyes never leaving Yuna. "When the Hollow first attacked, we had 30,000 colonists and one half-built settlement. No military. No weapons designed for this kind of enemy. Just farmers and engineers and families who wanted a new start. How did you survive?" Taiho asked. "We changed." Hyeben stopped in front of a display showing the planet below. "The Hollow thought we would be easy prey. They had consumed other species before us. They did not understand that humans are different. We do not accept death quietly. We fight. We adapt. We become whatever we need to become to survive." She touched the display, and images began to flow across the screen. Yuna saw the colony's history unfold in seconds. The first attacks. The desperate defense. The development of weapons that could harm beings made of shadow. The genetic modifications that let soldiers sense hollow presence. The neural implants that allowed pilots to react faster than any natural mind. Every generation gave something up so the next generation could survive, Hyeben continued. Our ancestors gave up peace. Our parents gave up childhood. We gave up. She paused, searching for the right word. We gave up softness, gentleness, the parts of being human that do not help in war. An old man stepped forward from the group of officers. He was thin and frail, the oldest person Yuna had seen since arriving. His eyes were kind but sad. I am Shunno, he said. I keep the histories, the old stories, the memories of who we were before the war. He smiled weakly. It is a lonely job. Not many people want to remember anymore. Remembering hurts. Yuna felt tears forming in her eyes. 300 years of this. How did you not give up? Sunho looked at her with something like surprise. Give up? Where will we go? The Hollow control the hyperspace lanes. Any ship that tries to leave gets caught. Our ancestors learned that in the first decade. 50 ships tried to escape. 50 ships were captured. The Hollow seated the crews and sent them back as weapons against us. His voice cracked slightly. We had to destroy our own people. Mothers killing sons. Children killing parents. After that, no one tried to run again. Taiho's wings folded tight against his back. In Keth body language, it was a sign of deep distress. The Union knew nothing of this. If we had known, you would have done what? Hyeben asked sharply. Sent a fleet? The Hollow would have consumed it. Sent diplomats? The Hollow do not negotiate. They do not understand the concept. To them, other species are just resources to be used and discarded. Then how can you fight them? Yuna asked. Hyeben smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. We found their weakness. The Hollow exists partially in subspace, but they need an anchor in normal space to maintain their presence here. A structure they built millions of years ago, before they entered their long sleep. When our ancestors arrived and began building, the activity woke them. They need that anchor to hunt in our reality. She touched the display again. A massive structure appeared, floating in the void near a dying star. It looked like nothing Yuna had ever seen. Angles that should not exist. surfaces that seemed to shift when viewed directly. A building made of nightmares. The dimensional anchor, HFY said. If we destroy it, the hollow will be trapped in subspace forever. They will be unable to enter our reality. The war will be over. Then why have you not destroyed it already? Taiho asked. Because it is defended by every hollow in existence. Because our weapons can only damage it, not destroy it completely. Because attacking it means throwing everything we have at an enemy that outnumbers us 1,000 to 1. HFY's voice was steady. We have been preparing for this moment for 50 years. Building ships, training soldiers, developing weapons. Tomorrow, we launch Operation Final Dawn. Every ship we have will attack the anchor. What are your chances of success? Yuna asked quietly. HFY was silent for a moment. 17%. Maybe less. And if you fail? Then the hollow will be weakened enough that your union might have a chance against them when they spread beyond this region. Our sacrifice will buy the galaxy time. HFY turned to face Yuna directly. That is why I allowed you aboard. Not for help. Not for rescue. I need you to witness. I need you to go back to your union and tell them what happened here. Tell them who we were. Tell them we held the line for 300 years against an enemy that should have destroyed us in 3 months. Yuna's voice shook. Let us help. Let us call the union. We can bring ships, weapons, soldiers. There is no time. The hollow are massing for their own final attack. If we do not strike first, they will overwhelm us within the week. Tomorrow is our only chance. HFY placed her hand on Yuna's shoulder. The touch was surprisingly gentle. Go back to your ship, Ambassador. Watch what happens tomorrow. And when it is over, one way or another, tell our story. That night, Yuna sat in the observation deck of the station, watching the human fleet gather in the darkness. Hundreds of ships, each one carrying people who knew they would probably die. She had never felt so helpless in her life. Footsteps approached behind her. She turned to find Sergeant Yunji standing there, 2 cups in her hands. Tea, Yunji said, offering 1 cup. It is not very good tea. We lost most of our crops in a hollow raid 30 years ago. But it is warm. Yuna took the cup. Thank you. Yunji sat beside her, looking out at the stars. You have been crying. Yes, that is good. Yunji sipped her tea. We have forgotten how to cry. We taught ourselves not to, because crying takes time and energy we could not spare. But sometimes I think we lost something important when we lost our tears. Are you afraid of tomorrow? Yunji considered the question. No, I was afraid when I was young. No, now I am just tired. I have been a soldier for 40 years. I have killed more hollow than I can count. I have watched friends die in my arms while I tried to save them. Fear is a luxury I cannot afford anymore. Yuna looked at her. How do you keep going? Because someone has to. Yunji smiled, and for a moment she looked almost peaceful. We made ourselves into monsters so our children would not have to be. That is not tragedy, Ambassador. That is victory. That is love. The only kind of love we have left to give. Yuna had no answer. She just sat in the darkness with a human soldier, drinking bad tea, waiting for the end of a war that had lasted 300 years. Tomorrow, everything would change. The morning came too quickly. Yuna had not slept. She had spent the night watching the human fleet assemble, ship after ship taking its position in the formation. By dawn, there were so many vessels that they blocked out the stars. Battleships and cruisers and carriers and hundreds of smaller craft. All pointed toward the distant globe where the dimensional anchor waited. Commander Taiho found her in the observation deck, still holding her empty teacup. I have been reviewing their fleet composition, he said quietly. They have approximately 400 combat vessels. The Hollow have an estimated 40,000 defenders around the anchor. 100 to 1 odds, Yuna whispered. Worse, actually. The Hollow ships are individually more powerful. They can phase through matter, ignore most conventional weapons, and repair damage almost instantly. Taiho's wings trembled. By any logical analysis, this attack cannot succeed. Then why are they doing it? Because they are human? Taiho sat beside her. I have studied your species for my entire career. I thought I understood you, but I never truly grasped this aspect of human nature until now. You do not calculate survival the way other species do. You do not surrender when the odds are impossible. You fight until you cannot fight anymore, and then you find a way to fight a little more. A chime sounded through the station. Admiral Haibin's voice followed, broadcast to every speaker. All personnel, this is the Admiral. The time has come. In 1 hour, we launch Operation Final Dawn. We have trained for this moment. We have sacrificed for this moment. We have lived and died for this moment for 300 years. Today, we end the Hollow War. Whatever happens in the next few hours, know that I am proud of every single one of you. You are the best of humanity. Now let us show these monsters what that means. The station erupted in activity. Soldiers ran to their ships. Engineers made final adjustments to weapon systems. Medics prepared for casualties that everyone knew would be enormous. Captain Jiwan appeared at the observation deck entrance. She was fully armored, her helmet tucked under one arm. Ambassador, the Admiral has requested your presence on the command bridge for the battle. She wants you to see everything. Yuna stood on legs that felt weak. I am honored. It is not honor. It is necessity. You are the only witness who will survive to tell our story. Jiwan's voice was flat, but her eyes showed something deeper. Fear, perhaps? Or maybe just exhaustion. Come, we do not have much time. The command bridge was larger than Yuna expected. Multiple levels of consoles surrounded a central holographic display that showed the entire battle space. Officers moved between stations with practiced efficiency. Admiral Haibin stood at the center, watching the display with calm focus. Ambassador, she said without turning around. I am glad you are here. This is history. Someone should remember it properly. The display showed the human fleet moving into attack formation. At the front were the largest battleships, their hulls covered in weapon batteries and armor plating. Behind them came the cruisers and destroyers. And behind those, barely visible, were the carrier ships loaded with fighter craft. The plan is simple, Haibin explained. We cannot match the Hollow in direct combat, so we will not try. Our main fleet will engage their defenders and hold their attention. Meanwhile, Captain Jiwan will lead a strike team directly to the anchor itself. They will plant charges designed to disrupt its dimensional frequency. When those charges detonate, the anchor will become unstable. And then? Yuna asked. Haibin was quiet for a moment. Then I will crash my flagship into the damaged section. The combined explosion should be enough to destroy the structure completely. Yuna felt the blood drain from her face. You plan to die. I plan to win. Haibin finally turned to look at her. I am 72 years old. I have commanded this fleet for 30 years. I have sent thousands of soldiers to their deaths. This is my responsibility, my duty, my privilege. She smiled slightly. Besides, I am tired. I would like to rest. There has been no rest in 300 years. The first alarm sounded. The fleet had reached engagement range. All ships, commence attack. Haibin ordered. The display erupted in light. Human ships fired their weapons in a coordinated barrage that turned space into a wall of fire. The Hollow defenders responded instantly, phasing into existence and returning fire with beams of darkness that ate through armor like acid through paper. Ships began dying on both sides. Yuna watched in horror as a human cruiser was torn apart by 3 hollow vessels. Escape pods launched from the wreckage, but the hollow destroyed them before they could get clear. No mercy, no quarter. Heavy casualties on the left flank, an officer reported. The hollow are concentrating fire on our battleships. Reinforce with reserves from the second line, HFY ordered. Keep their attention on the main fleet. On another part of the display, Yuna could see Captain Jiwan's strike team approaching the anchor through the chaos. Their ships were small and fast, designed for exactly this kind of mission. Lieutenant Dohin was piloting the lead vessel, his augmented eyes processing information faster than any natural brain could manage. Strike team is through the outer perimeter. Jiwan's voice crackled through the communication system. Approaching the anchor now. Heavy resistance. Hold them off, HFY said. Whatever it takes. The battle intensified. Human ships threw themselves at hollow vessels in suicide attacks, their crews ejecting at the last moment to board enemy craft with handheld weapons. Soldiers fought in the vacuum of space, their armor the only thing keeping them alive as they planted explosives on hollow hulls. Sergeant Yunji's voice came through the system, calm despite the chaos. Medical teams are overwhelmed. We have wounded coming in faster than we can treat them. Do what you can, HFY replied. Everyone knew the cost. An hour passed. Then 2. The human fleet was being destroyed piece by piece, but they refused to retreat. Every ship that fell was replaced by another surging forward. Every soldier who died was honored by their comrades fighting harder. Finally, Jiwan's voice broke through the static. We are at the anchor. Beginning placement of charges. Estimate 15 minutes to completion. You have 10, HFY said. The fleet cannot hold much longer. On the display, Yuna could see the situation clearly. The human fleet had been reduced to less than half its original size. The hollow were pressing from all directions. It was only a matter of time before they broke through to the strike team. Taeho leaned close to Yuna. They are losing. They know, she whispered back. But the humans did not stop fighting. They could not. This was their only chance, and they were spending their lives to buy every extra second. A massive explosion lit up the display. One of the human carriers had deliberately rammed a hollow command ship, destroying both vessels in a ball of fire. Admiral, an officer said, her voice cracking. That was the sunrise. Captain Minho is gone. HFY closed her eyes for a brief moment. Add his name to the wall. He died well. Charges are set. Jiwan's voice came through, triumphant despite everything. Strike team is withdrawing. The anchor is yours, Admiral. HFY straightened her uniform. She looked around the bridge at her officers, her crew, her people. It has been an honor serving with all of you. Now get to the escape pods. That is an order. The bridge crew hesitated for only a moment. Then they began moving toward the exits, some of them crying, all of them saluting as they passed their admiral. Ambassador, HFY said to Yuna, go with them, live, tell our story. Yuna found she could not move. I do not want to leave. That is not your choice. HFY's voice was gentle but firm. Your duty is to witness and remember. My duty is to end this. We each have our roles to play. Taeho took Yuna's arm. We must go, please. As they reached the door, Yuna looked back. Admiral HFY stood alone at the command console, her hands steady as she prepared to fly her ship directly into the dimensional anchor. Admiral, Yuna called out. What should I tell them? About you? About all of this? HFY smiled. It was the first genuine smile Yuna had seen from her. Tell them we never surrendered, she said. Tell them we held the line. Tell them that when the universe tried to hollow us out, we refused. Tell them we stayed human, even when it cost us everything. The door closed between them. Yun ran for the escape pods, tears streaming down her face. Behind her, the flagship turned toward the anchor, and Admiral Hyeben prepared to make her final sacrifice. The anchor died in a flash of light that could be seen across the entire star system. Yuna watched from the escape pod as Admiral Hyben's flagship, the Never Forgotten, crashed directly into the damaged structure. The charges had done their work, weakening the dimensional bonds that held the anchor together. The impact of the massive ship finished the job. For a moment, the anchor seemed to fold in on itself, its impossible angles collapsing into something even stranger. Then it exploded outward in a wave of energy that passed through everything without causing damage. It was not fire or force. It was something else. Something final. The hollow ships froze all across the battlefield. The sleek black vessels stopped moving, stopped firing, stopped existing in normal space. They flickered like candles in a wind that came from nowhere. Some of them vanished instantly. Others held on for seconds longer, their crews struggling to maintain cohesion. But one by one, they all faded away, pulled back into the subspace dimension they had come from. The dimensional gate was closed. The hollow could never return. The surviving human ships did not celebrate. There was no cheering, no victory cries broadcast across the communications channels. Just silence. Exhausted, grieving silence. Yuna's escape pod was picked up by a human cruiser 2 hours later. She found Taiho already aboard, along with several other survivors from the command station. Bora was there too, her wings wrapped tightly around herself in shock. Jisoo floated in a damaged tank, his tentacles moving weakly. Dory's crystal body flickered with unstable light. "We won," Taiho said quietly. "I cannot believe it. We actually won." Captain Jiwon's voice came over the ship's speakers. "All vessels, begin recovery operations. Pick up every survivor. Retrieve every body. No one gets left behind." They worked for 3 days straight. The butcher's bill was devastating. Of the 400 ships that had launched the attack, fewer than 50 remained functional. Thousands of soldiers had died in the battle. Thousands more were wounded. The command station was damaged beyond repair. Admiral Hyben's flagship was gone completely, vaporized in the explosion that destroyed the anchor. But they had won. Yuna was returned to the gentle dawn, which had stayed safely outside the combat zone as ordered. She found her ship surrounded by human vessels, not threatening but protective. They were making sure the witnesses stayed safe. G1 came aboard personally to speak with her. The captain looked different now, smaller somehow. The weight of the battle had pressed her down, taken something from her that would never return. "It is over," Jiwon said. She sounded like she could not quite believe it herself. 300 years, 18 generations, millions of lives. And it is finally over. What will you do now? Yuna asked. Jiwon sat down heavily. Without her helmet, she looked young and old at the same time. "I do not know. We have been fighting for so long that I do not know how to do anything else. None of us do. We made ourselves into weapons. Now the war is over and the weapons are still here. You could come back to the Union. There are worlds you could settle. People who would welcome you, perhaps." Jiwon did not sound convinced. "But we need something more than just a place to live. We need—" She stopped, searching for words. "We need to remember how to be people again. We have forgotten so much. Music, art, stories that are not about war. We raised our children to be soldiers because we had no choice. Now we have a choice, and we do not know what to choose." Yuna reached out and took Jiwon's hand. The captain flinched at first, then relaxed. Human touch that was not violent was clearly unfamiliar to her. "Let us help you," Yuna said. Not with weapons or ships. With teachers. With artists. With poets and musicians and storytellers. Let us help you remember what you gave up. Ji-Yuan looked at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, tears began to fall from her eyes. She did not sob or shake. The tears just flowed silently down her scarred face, as if they had been waiting for 300 years to be released. "We would like that," she whispered. "We would like that very much." 1 year later, the colony world had changed. The military bases still stood, but they were being converted into schools and hospitals and community centers. The weapons factories had been shut down, their workers learning new trades. The constant war alerts no longer echoed through the streets. Yuna walked through the capital city toward a building that had once been a barracks. It was now a school, one of dozens that had opened across the planet. The Union had sent hundreds of teachers from a dozen different species. They taught everything from basic mathematics to ancient Earth literature to alien philosophy. She found what she was looking for in a small classroom on the second floor. A moral teacher named Jisoo floated in his tank at the front of the room, his tentacles moving expressively as he spoke. His voice bubbled through the translator, gentle and kind. And so the little prince asked the fox, "What does it mean to be tamed?" Jisoo read from an old book, its pages yellow with age. And the fox replied, "It means to establish ties. To me, you are still nothing more than a little boy who is just like 100,000 other little boys. I have no need of you, and you, on your part, have no need of me. But if you tame me, then we shall need each other." The children listened with wide eyes. Some of them had never heard a story that was not about battle or survival. The concept of a fox that talked and a prince who traveled between planets was strange and wonderful to them. At the back of the room, standing in the doorway, was Captain Ji-Yuan. She was not in armor anymore. She wore simple civilian clothes, and her face was softer than Yuna remembered. She was watching the children with an expression that Yuna had never seen on her face before. It was hope. Yuna moved to stand beside her. They watched together in silence as Jisoo finished the chapter and the children began asking questions. What is a flower? What is a sunset? What does it mean to be responsible for what you have tamed? I never heard that story, Jae-won said quietly. We lost all our books in the 3rd decade of the war. Sunho tried to preserve what he could, but there were so many gaps. So much that we forgot. You are hearing it now. Yes. Ji-Won wiped her eyes. She was crying again. She had learned how to cry in the past year, and she did it often. Yes, I am. Yoonji appeared behind them, her rifle replaced with a medical bag. She had become the head of the colony's new civilian medical program. She was teaching others how to heal without also preparing for combat. The Union representatives are ready for the memorial ceremony, Eunji said. They want you both there. The memorial wall circled the capital city twice, just as Hyeben had said. Every name was carved into the stone. Millions of names. The Union had offered to help maintain it, but the colonists had refused. This was their history, their burden and their pride. At the newest section of the wall, a ceremony was taking place. Representatives from the Union stood alongside human survivors. Commander Taiho read a speech he had written about courage and sacrifice. A Keth choir sang a song of remembrance in clicking harmonies. And then, at the end, old Sunho stepped forward. He was frailer now, his health failing, but his voice was still clear. 300 years ago, our ancestors came to this place seeking a new beginning, he said. They found instead an enemy that tried to hollow them out, to take away everything that made them human. But they refused. We refused. We held on to our humanity with everything we had. Even as we became soldiers, even as we forgot our songs and stories, even as we lost the ability to cry. He looked at the crowd, at the aliens and humans standing together, at the children who would grow up in peace. "We are learning to be human again," ZoneHFY continued. "It is hard. We have been weapons for so long that we do not know how to be anything else. But we are trying. And that is what being human means. Not that we are perfect, but that we keep trying, no matter how many times we fall." He turned to the wall and placed his hand on the newest names carved into the stone. Admiral Hyeben, Captain Minho, thousands of others who had died in the final battle. "We remember you," ZoneHFY said. "We honor you. And we promise that your sacrifice was not wasted. The war is over. The Hollow are gone forever. And humanity endures." The ceremony ended. People drifted away in small groups, talking quietly, some of them crying, some of them laughing for the first time in years. Yuna found herself standing alone before the wall, looking at the endless names stretching into the distance. Taiho joined her. "I have spent my entire career studying humans," he said. "I thought I understood your species, but I never truly understood until I came here. What do you understand now? That you are the most stubborn beings in the galaxy." He made a sound that might have been a Keth laugh. Any other species would have given up, would have accepted their fate and died quietly. But not humans. You refuse to accept the impossible. You break yourselves against it until either you are destroyed or the impossible gives way. Yuna smiled. "Is that a compliment?" "The highest I can give." Taiho looked at the wall. They held the line for 300 years against an enemy that should have consumed them in months. They lost almost everything. And they still won. If that is not worthy of respect, I do not know what is. From somewhere in the city, music began to play. It was clumsy and uncertain, played by people who were still learning how to make sounds that were not weapons. But it was music.